The morning sun was just beginning to rise over the city of New Washington when Commander Daniel received the message that would change his life forever. He was sitting in his small apartment on the 47th floor of a military housing building, drinking his third cup of coffee and reading reports from the outer colonies. The reports were the same as always: pirates attacking shipping lanes, minor border disputes with alien species, the usual chaos of a galaxy that never seemed to find peace. Daniel was 34 years old. He had short brown hair that was starting to show a few gray strands near his temples. His face was hard and weathered from years of combat, with a thin scar running along his left jaw where a warrior had nearly taken his head off 3 years ago. His eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they held the kind of weariness that came from seeing too much death too young. He had served in the Terran Defense Corps for 12 years. He had fought in the Uprising, the Battle of Station, and the desperate defense of Colony 7 against the Swarm. He had been wounded 11 times, decorated 9 times, and promoted more times than he could remember. He was one of the most respected soldiers in the entire Corps. And he was bored out of his mind. The last 6 months had been nothing but desk duty and training exercises. After the incident on station, where he had held a corridor alone against 12 drones for 6 hours, the brass had decided he was too valuable to risk in regular combat operations. So they had stuck him behind a desk, pushing papers and reviewing tactical reports while younger soldiers went out and did the actual fighting. Daniel hated every minute of it. His communicator buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. The message was marked with the highest priority classification, which meant it came from someone very important. He opened it and read the contents twice before he believed what he was seeing. Commander, you are ordered to report to the embassy at 900 hours for immediate reassignment. Do not discuss this order with anyone. Ambassador will brief you upon arrival. Daniel stared at the message for a long moment. The embassy. That was unexpected. They were humanity's most powerful allies, an ancient empire that spanned 37 star systems and commanded the largest fleet in the known galaxy. They had saved humanity from extinction during the First War, and in return, humanity had pledged eternal friendship and cooperation. But they did not often request specific human soldiers by name. Whatever this was about, it was big. Daniel finished his coffee, put on his dress uniform, and headed for the embassy. The embassy was located in the heart of New Washington, a massive structure of white stone and glowing crystal that towered over the surrounding buildings. It had been built 200 years ago, when the Alliance was first formed, and it remained the most impressive piece of architecture on Earth. The walls seemed to shimmer in the morning light, and the great doors were carved with scenes from history that Daniel could not begin to understand. He approached the entrance and was immediately stopped by a pair of guards. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that held a faint violet hue and eyes that shimmered like liquid silver. They wore armor of dark metal that seemed to absorb the light around it, and they carried plasma lances that could cut a human in half with a single shot. Daniel had fought alongside before. He knew how dangerous they could be. One of the guards scanned his identification and nodded. The great doors swung open, and Daniel stepped inside. The interior of the embassy was even more impressive than the exterior. The floors were made of polished white stone that seemed to glow from within. The walls were decorated with tapestries that depicted conquests across the galaxy, and the ceiling soared so high overhead that Daniel could barely see it, lost in a haze of soft golden light. A human woman was waiting for him just inside the entrance. She was in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and a face that looked like it had never smiled in its entire life. She wore the formal robes of a Terran ambassador, and she carried herself with the rigid posture of someone who had spent decades navigating the treacherous waters of interstellar diplomacy. Daniel recognized her immediately. Ambassador was one of the most important people in the Terran government. She had negotiated the Second Alliance Treaty with the secured trade agreements with 6 different alien species, and personally talked the out of destroying Colony 12 during the border crisis. She was brilliant, ruthless, and utterly terrifying. And she was looking at Daniel like he was a particularly interesting specimen under a microscope. "Commander," she said, "thank you for coming so quickly." Daniel saluted. "Ambassador, your message said this was urgent." "It is." She turned and began walking deeper into the embassy, clearly expecting him to follow. "Tell me, Commander, what do you know about Princess Ra?" Daniel fell into step beside her. The youngest daughter of Queen Aura, third in line for the throne, known for her interest in xenobiology and her somewhat unconventional views on relations. Raised an eyebrow. "You've done your homework." "I read the briefings, Ambassador. It's part of my job." "Good. Then you know that the princess is about to embark on a diplomatic tour of the frontier colonies. She will be visiting 7 human settlements over the course of 3 months, meeting with colonial governors and observing human culture firsthand." Daniel nodded slowly. "I had heard rumors. Why is this relevant to me?" Stopped walking and turned to face him. "Because, Commander, the princess has specifically requested a human bodyguard to accompany her on this tour, and after reviewing the records of every soldier in the Terran Defense Corps, she has chosen you." Daniel blinked. "Me? With respect, Ambassador, that doesn't make any sense. They have their own warriors and they're far superior to anything we can offer. A human bodyguard would be nothing more than a symbolic gesture." "Exactly," smiled thinly. "Politics, Commander. The princess wishes to demonstrate trust between our species. She believes that having a human at her side will send a message to both our peoples that the alliance is strong and growing stronger. You are a symbol as much as a protector." "I'm a soldier, not a symbol." "Today you are both." The expression hardened. "Make no mistake, Commander. This assignment is the most important thing you will ever do. The princess is third in line for the throne of an empire that spans 37 star systems. If anything happens to her while she is in our care, the alliance crumbles. And if the alliance crumbles, humanity stands alone against the Dominion." Daniel understood the implications immediately. There were species that had already consumed 3 civilizations. They did not negotiate, they did not compromise, and they did not show mercy. They simply ate everything in their path and moved on to the next world. Only the combined might of the Empire and the Terran Federation kept them at bay. Without the, humanity would be next on the menu. "I understand, Ambassador," Daniel said quietly. "When do I begin?" "Immediately. The princess is waiting for you." Led him through a maze of corridors and staircases, deeper and deeper into the embassy. They passed through security checkpoints manned by both human and guards, each one more heavily armed than the last. Finally, they arrived at a pair of ornate doors guarded by 4 warriors in ceremonial armor. The guards stepped aside, and the doors swung open. Daniel stepped into a room that took his breath away. It was a garden, or something like a garden, filled with plants and flowers from a dozen different worlds. Bioluminescent blossoms cast soft blue and green light across winding stone paths. Trees with silver leaves rustled in an artificial breeze. And somewhere in the distance, water fell in a musical cascade that seemed to sing. Standing in the center of the garden, examining a flower that pulsed with soft golden light, was Princess Ra. She was not what Daniel had expected. The briefings had described her as young by standards, barely 200 years old, which translated to roughly 25 in human terms. They had mentioned her interest in science and her reputation for asking uncomfortable questions, but they had not mentioned how beautiful she was. Her skin held the same violet hue as all, but it seemed to glow with an inner light that Daniel had never seen before. Her hair was long and silver, falling past her shoulders in waves that caught the light from the bioluminescent flowers. Her eyes were the same liquid silver as her people, but they held a warmth and curiosity that set her apart from the cold, calculating Daniel had encountered before. She was tall, nearly 6.5 feet, and she moved with a grace that made Daniel feel clumsy and awkward in comparison. She wore simple robes of deep blue, without any of the ornate decorations that typically marked royalty. And she was smiling at him. "You are Commander," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that Daniel found strangely pleasant. "The human who fought alone against 12 drones on station." Daniel bowed stiffly. "I did my duty, Your Highness." "You held a corridor for 6 hours with nothing but a pulse rifle and a combat knife. By the time reinforcements arrived, you had killed all 12. My people speak of such feats with reverence." She tilted her head, studying him with those silver eyes. "Yet you stand before me as if you are nothing special." "I'm a soldier, Your Highness. I do what needs to be done." Ra moved closer to him, and Daniel forced himself not to step back. She was examining him like he was one of the flowers in her garden, something fascinating and strange that she wanted to understand. "Do you know what they call your species, Commander? They call you the mad apes of Terra. They believe you are insane because you fight without hope of survival, without calculation of odds. What they do not understand is that this is not madness." She paused, her silver eyes locked on his. "It is something far more interesting." "What is that, Your Highness?" "I do not know yet. That is what I intend to find out." She smiled again, and Daniel felt something strange stir in his chest. "I have studied humans for many years, Commander. I have read your history, your literature, your philosophy, but I have never truly understood you. This tour will give me the opportunity to observe your species in its natural environment, and you will help me." "I will do my best, Your Highness." "I know you will. That is why I chose you." She turned and began walking along one of the garden paths, clearly expecting him to follow. "Tell me, Commander, do you have family?" Daniel fell into step beside her. "A brother, Your Highness. He worked on the agricultural station orbiting Mars." "Worked past tense." Daniel hesitated. "He died in a raid 18 months ago. I was on assignment in the outer colonies. By the time I heard about the attack, it was already over." Ra stopped walking and turned to face him. Her expression had changed, the curiosity replaced by something that looked almost like sympathy. "I am sorry for your loss, Commander. They have taken much from both our peoples." "Thank you, Your Highness." "You carry guilt," she said softly. "I can see it in your eyes. You believe you should have been there. You believe you could have saved him." Daniel said nothing. He did not trust himself to speak. "Guilt is a strange emotion," Ra continued. "My people do not feel it the same way humans do. We believe that events unfold as they must, that there is no point in regretting what cannot be changed. But humans are different. You cling to your guilt like a shield, using it to drive yourselves forward." She reached out and placed her hand on his arm, a gesture that would have scandalized the court if anyone had seen it. "Perhaps that is what makes you so strong." Daniel looked down at her hand, then up at her face. "Your Highness, I'm not sure I understand." "You will." She her hand and resumed walking. "The tour begins in 3 days. You will need to familiarize yourself with the itinerary, the security protocols, and the various colonial governors we will be meeting. Ambassador will provide you with the necessary materials." "Yes, Your Highness." "One more thing, Commander." She stopped at the edge of a small pond, where fish with scales of gold and silver swam in lazy circles. "I have requested that you be my primary bodyguard for this tour. That means you will be at my side at all times except when I am in my private quarters. You will eat with me, travel with me, and attend every function with me. Is that acceptable?" Daniel nodded. "Whatever you require, Your Highness." "Good." She turned to face him one last time, and her smile was bright enough to light up the entire garden. "I think I shall enjoy this tour, Commander. I think I shall enjoy it very much." The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and planning. Daniel reviewed the itinerary until he could recite it from memory. He studied the layouts of every colonial building they would be visiting, memorizing choke points and escape routes and potential security weaknesses. He read files on every governor, every aide, every servant who would come within 100 meters of the princess. He also began learning about culture. Ambassador had assigned him a tutor, a young diplomat named L who seemed to find humans endlessly amusing. L was male, which Daniel had difficulty determining at first since did not have the same obvious physical differences between sexes that humans did. He was also patient, which was fortunate because Daniel had a lot of questions. "Why did the princess choose me specifically?" Daniel asked during one of their sessions. "There must be hundreds of soldiers with better records, more experience, more impressive accomplishments." Elle smiled, showing teeth that were slightly sharper than human teeth. "You truly do not understand, do you? Commander, your record is exceptional. You have faced them more times than almost any human alive, and you have survived every encounter. But that is not why she chose you." "Then why?" "Because of what happened on station. When you held that corridor alone, you did not know that reinforcements were coming. You did not know if anyone would ever find you. By all logical calculation, you should have retreated, should have found a defensive position and waited for rescue. Instead, you stood and fought." "There were civilians behind me," Daniel said. "Children, I couldn't let them reach them." "Exactly." El leaned forward, his silver eyes intense. "You fought not because you thought you could win, but because you believed it was the right thing to do. That kind of conviction is rare, Commander. Even among my people who have waged war for thousands of years, such purity of purpose is difficult to find. The princess saw it in your record, and she wished to see it for herself." Daniel thought about that for a long time after the session ended. He had never considered himself special. He had simply done what any soldier would have done in his position. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the things that seemed ordinary to him were extraordinary to others. On the morning of the fourth day, they departed for the frontier. The ship was called the Starlight Harmony, a diplomatic vessel the size of a small city. It had been designed for comfort rather than combat, with vast observation decks, luxurious quarters and gardens that rivaled the one in the embassy. It also had enough weapons to destroy a small moon, because the never traveled anywhere without the ability to defend themselves. Daniel was given quarters near the princess's private chambers, a suite of rooms that was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. He had his own bathroom, his own kitchen, and his own observation window that looked out at the stars. He felt completely out of place. The first day of the journey was uneventful. Daniel spent most of it reviewing security protocols with the guards who would be accompanying them. They were professional and competent, but they clearly did not understand why a human had been given such an important position. Daniel did not try to explain. He simply did his job. On the second day, the princess summoned him to the observation deck. He found her standing alone at the great window, gazing out at the stars. The ship was traveling through hyperspace now, and the view was like nothing Daniel had ever seen. Colors swirled and danced beyond the glass, blues and purples and golds that seemed to pulse with an inner light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Commander," Ross said without turning around, "thank you for coming." "Your Highness." Daniel approached and stood beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Is there something you need?" "I wish to talk." She finally turned to face him, and he saw that her eyes were troubled. "Tell me, Commander, what do you know about my family?" Daniel considered the question carefully. "I know that your mother is Queen Aura, ruler of the Empire. I know that you have two older sisters, and who are first and second in line for the throne. I know that your father died in battle against the approximately 300 years ago." "You have done your homework," she said, echoing Ambassador's words from their first meeting. "What else do you know?" "I know that you are considered something of an outsider in the court. Your interest in science is seen as beneath your station. Your views on relations are considered radical by the more conservative elements of the nobility. and your request for a human bodyguard has caused considerable controversy." Ra laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You are very well informed, Commander. Did your briefings also mention that I am considered the expendable daughter, the one who can be sent to the frontier while my sisters remain safely at the heart of the Empire?" Daniel hesitated. "I had gathered as much, Your Highness. My mother believes this tour will be good for me. She says it will teach me about responsibility, about duty, about the importance of the Alliance. But I know the truth." Ra turned back to the window, her reflection ghostly against the swirling colors of hyperspace. "She wants me out of the way. My sisters are preparing for succession, positioning themselves for the day when my mother steps down from the throne. There is no place for me in their plans." "Your Highness, I'm sure that's not true." "It is true, Commander. I have accepted it." She was silent for a moment, then continued. "Do you know what I want more than anything else in the galaxy?" "No, Your Highness." "I want to explore. I want to see the unknown regions, the places where no has ever traveled. I want to discover new species, new worlds, new forms of life. I want to understand the universe, not rule it," she sighed. "But I am a princess, and princesses do not get to choose their own paths." Daniel thought about his brother, about the choices that had been taken from him by circumstance and duty. He thought about his own life, the years spent fighting wars he did not start for reasons he did not always understand. He thought about the weight of expectation that pressed down on both of them, the invisible chains that bound them to their stations. "I understand, Your Highness," he said quietly, "more than you might think." Ra turned to look at him, and something in her expression changed. "Perhaps you do, Commander. Perhaps that is another reason I chose you." She was silent for a moment, then smiled. "We are more alike than either of us realized. Two souls trapped by duty, dreaming of freedom." "Your Highness," she said suddenly, "when we are alone like this, you may call me. The formal titles grow tiresome." Daniel blinked. "That would be highly improper, Your Highness, if anyone heard." "No one will hear, and I am tired of being proper." She moved closer to him, and Daniel felt his heart begin to beat faster. "Tell me, Daniel, do you ever dream of escape?" It was the first time she had used his first name. Daniel was not sure how to feel about that. "Sometimes," he admitted. "When I was young, before I joined the Corps, I used to dream of being an explorer. I wanted to travel to distant worlds, see things no human had ever seen. But then the came, and dreams had to wait." "Dreams should never wait," Ra said softly. "They are what make life worth living." She reached out and touched his hand just briefly, and Daniel felt a shock run through his entire body. "Perhaps, when this tour is over, we can help each other find our dreams." Daniel did not know what to say to that. He simply stood there looking at her, feeling something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope, wonder, and something else, something dangerous that he did not dare to name. "We should probably return to our quarters," he finally said. "The first colony is only 2 days away, and there's still a lot of preparation to do." Ross smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise. "Of course, Commander, duty calls." She turned and began walking toward the door, then paused and looked back at him. "Thank you for talking with me, Daniel. It has been a long time since I had someone I could truly speak to." "Any time, Your Highness." She laughed, a musical sound that echoed through the observation deck. "We will make a diplomat of you yet, Commander." And then she was gone, leaving Daniel alone with the swirling colors of hyperspace and his own confused thoughts. The first colony they visited was called New Plymouth, a small settlement on the edge of human space that had been established barely 50 years ago. It was a mining colony, primarily, extracting rare minerals from the planet's rich crust and shipping them back to Earth. The population was small, perhaps 20,000 people, and they were not accustomed to royal visitors. The welcome ceremony was awkward but sincere. Governor was a stout woman in her 60s who had clearly never met a before. She stumbled over the formal greetings, mispronounced the princess's name twice, and nearly fainted when Ra complimented her dress. But she was genuine in her hospitality, and Daniel could see that the princess appreciated that more than any amount of pomp and circumstance. The tour of the mining facilities was actually interesting, at least to Daniel. He had never seen the massive drilling machines that burrowed into the planet's crust, or the refining plants that separated the valuable minerals from the worthless rock. The workers were proud of what they had built, and they were eager to show it off to their distinguished visitor. Ra asked questions constantly. She wanted to know how the machines worked, what minerals they were extracting, how the colonists had adapted to life so far from Earth. She listened to the answers with genuine interest, taking notes on a small device she carried with her everywhere. Daniel could see why she had a reputation for being unconventional. No other princess would have cared about the inner workings of a human mining operation. But he also noticed other things. He noticed the way some of the workers looked at the princess with barely concealed hostility. He noticed the whispered conversations that stopped whenever they approached. He noticed the tension that seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Something was wrong on New Plymouth. Daniel could feel it in his bones. On the third day of their visit, he found out what it was. They were attending a reception at the governor's mansion, a modest building by Earth standards but the finest structure on the entire planet. The colonial elite had gathered to meet the princess, wearing their best clothes and their most impressive smiles. But Daniel could see through the facade. He could see the fear behind the smiles. He was standing near the entrance, watching the room with the practiced eye of a soldier, when a young man approached him. He was thin and nervous-looking, with pale skin and eyes that darted back and forth like a frightened animal. "Commander," the young man whispered, "I need to speak with you privately." Daniel studied him for a moment. He was wearing the uniform of a colonial administrator, but his hands were shaking and there was sweat on his forehead. He looked terrified. "Who are you?" "My name is Bradley. I work in the Colonial Records office. Please, Commander, I don't have much time. They're watching me." "Who's watching you?" "I can't explain here. There's a storage room at the end of the East Corridor. Meet me there in 10 minutes, please. Lives depend on it." Before Daniel could respond, the young man had disappeared into the crowd. Daniel stood there for a moment, considering his options. He could ignore the request, dismiss it as the ravings of a paranoid colonist. But his instincts were telling him something different. His instincts were telling him that Bradley was genuinely afraid and that his fear was justified. 10 minutes later, Daniel slipped away from the reception and made his way to the East Corridor. He found the storage room without difficulty, a small space filled with cleaning supplies and spare furniture. Bradley was waiting for him inside, packing back and forth with nervous energy. "Thank you for coming," he said as soon as Daniel closed the door. "I wasn't sure you would." "You have 2 minutes to explain what this is about." Nodded rapidly. "It's the governor. She's been making deals with pirates, selling them information about shipping routes, security codes, cargo manifests. In exchange, they leave New Plymouth alone and give her a cut of the profits." Daniel felt his blood run cold. That's a serious accusation. "I have proof. Records, communications, financial transactions. I found them by accident 3 months ago when I was updating the database. I didn't know what to do. If I reported it through official channels, the governor would have me killed. But when I heard the princess was coming, I thought maybe." He trailed off, his eyes desperate. "Please, Commander, the princess has the authority to investigate. She can expose the truth without putting my life at risk." Daniel studied the young man carefully. He was looking for signs of deception, but all he could see was fear. Bradley believed what he was saying. Whether it was true or not was another matter. "Show me the proof," Daniel said. Pulled a small data chip from his pocket and handed it over. "It's all here. Everything I found. Please, Commander, don't let them know where you got it. If they find out I talked to you." "I'll protect you," Daniel said. "But I need to verify this information before I take it to the princess. If you're lying to me, I'm not lying. I swear on my life I'm not lying. Daniel pocketed the data chip. Stay here for another 5 minutes after I leave. Don't talk to anyone. Don't act suspicious. Can you do that? Nodded frantically. Yes, yes, I can do that. Good. Daniel opened the door and checked the corridor. It was empty. I'll be in touch. He made his way back to the reception, his mind racing. If Bradley was telling the truth, then Governor was a traitor. She had been selling information to pirates, putting countless lives at risk for personal profit. It was the kind of corruption that made Daniel sick to his stomach. But if was lying, or if he had been set up, then this could be a trap. Someone could be trying to discredit the princess, to damage the alliance between humans, and Daniel needed to be careful. He found a quiet corner of the reception hall and used his communicator to access the data chip. What he found made his blood boil. Bradley had not been lying. The records were clear and damning. Governor had been communicating with the Crimson Blades, a pirate gang that operated in the outer colonies. She had been providing them with shipping schedules, security codes, and cargo manifests. In exchange, she received a percentage of their profits, deposited in a hidden account on a neutral space station. The communications went back 3 years. In that time, the Crimson Blades had raided 17 ships, killing over 200 people, and had made it all possible. Daniel closed the files and took a deep breath. He needed to tell the princess, but he needed to do it carefully without alerting the governor or her allies. If realized she was under suspicion, she might try to silence them before they could act. He found Ra near the center of the room, surrounded by a crowd of colonial dignitaries. She was smiling and nodding at something one of them was saying, but Daniel could see the weariness behind her eyes. She was bored and tired and ready for the evening to end. He approached and whispered in her ear, "Your Highness, I need to speak with you urgently, in private." Ra did not miss a beat. She made her excuses to the dignitaries, claiming fatigue from the day's activities, and allowed Daniel to escort her from the room. They walked in silence until they reached her quarters, where a pair of guards stood watch. "Leave us," Ra said. The guards hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the order, but they obeyed. Once they were gone, she turned to Daniel. "What is it?" Daniel told her everything. He showed her the data chip, explained what Bradley had revealed, laid out the evidence of Governor's betrayal. Ra listened in silence, her expression growing darker with each passing moment. "This is unacceptable," she said when he had finished. "This woman has betrayed her own people for profit. She has aided pirates who murder and steal with impunity. She must be brought to justice." "I agree, Your Highness, but we need to be careful. If we accuse her publicly without proper authority, it could cause an incident. We need to contact the Terran government, request an official investigation." "There is no time for that." Ra's silver eyes were blazing with anger. "Every day that woman remains in power is another day that innocent people are at risk. I will not allow it to continue." "Your Highness, please. I understand your anger, but we need to think strategically. If we move too quickly, we could make things worse." Ra took a deep breath, visibly trying to calm herself. "You are right, Commander. I apologize. My emotions got the better of me." She was silent for a moment, then continued. "What do you suggest?" Daniel considered the question carefully. "We leave New Plymouth tomorrow as scheduled. We don't give any indication that we suspect anything. Once we're safely away, we transmit the evidence to Ambassador and let her handle it through official channels. The governor will be arrested, the pirates will be tracked down, and justice will be served. And in the meantime, Bradley remains in danger. I'll make arrangements to have him transferred off-world. We can claim it's for routine administrative reasons. By the time the governor realizes what's happening, he'll be safely out of her reach." Ron nodded slowly. "Very well, Commander, we will do it your way." She looked at him with something approaching admiration. "You are more than just a soldier, aren't you? You understand politics, strategy, the delicate art of maneuvering without being seen." Daniel shrugged. "I've learned a few things over the years." "I am glad I chose you, Daniel," she smiled, and the anger in her eyes faded, replaced by warmth. "You are exactly what I needed." They left New Plymouth the next morning, as scheduled. Daniel had arranged for Bradley to be transferred to a transport ship heading for Earth, officially to assist with a database migration project. By the time anyone realized he was gone, he would be safely beyond Governor's reach. 3 weeks later, while they were en route to the second colony, Ambassador confirmed that the governor had been arrested. The evidence Daniel had provided was more than enough to convict her. The Crimson Blades were being hunted down by a joint human task force. Justice was being served. Ra was pleased, but more than that, she was impressed. She had expected Daniel to be a good soldier, a loyal protector who would follow orders without question. Instead, she had found a man of intelligence and principle, someone who understood that true strength was not just about fighting, but about knowing when and how to act. She found herself seeking out his company more and more. They would walk through the gardens of the Starlight Harmony, discussing philosophy and science and the nature of the universe. They would sit on the observation deck, watching the stars pass by and sharing stories of their lives. They would eat together in the ship's dining hall, ignoring the curious looks of the guards. Daniel knew it was inappropriate. He knew that the princess was far above his station, that their friendship could never be anything more. But he could not deny the connection he felt with her. She was brilliant and curious and kind, and she made him feel like more than just a soldier. She made him feel like a person. The second colony was called Frontier's Edge, a research station on the border of unexplored space. It was smaller than New Plymouth, with a population of only 5,000, but it was more advanced. The scientists here were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, studying alien artifacts and developing new technologies that would shape the future of the species. Ra was in her element. She spent hours in the laboratories, asking questions and examining equipment and discussing theories with the researchers. Daniel watched her with a smile on his face, seeing her truly happy for the first time since the tour began. But he also remained vigilant. The events on New Plymouth had taught him that danger could lurk anywhere, even in the most peaceful settings. He kept his eyes open, his senses alert, ready for any sign of trouble. On the fourth day, trouble found them. They were attending a demonstration in the main research hall, where a team of scientists was showing off a new type of shield technology. The princess was standing at the front of the crowd, her silver eyes bright with interest as she watched the demonstration. Daniel was positioned behind her, scanning the room for potential threats. He noticed the man almost immediately. He was standing near the back of the room, dressed in the white coat of a researcher, but there was something wrong about him. His eyes were too focused, too intense. His hands were hidden in his pockets, and he was slowly moving closer to the princess. Daniel's instincts screamed at him. He pushed through the crowd, his hand moving to the weapon at his hip. The man saw him coming and his expression changed, becoming desperate and dangerous. "For the purity of the species," the man shouted, and pulled a weapon from his pocket. Time seemed to slow down. Daniel saw the weapon rising, saw the man's finger tightening on the trigger. He threw himself forward, his body moving on pure instinct, and crashed into the princess just as the weapon fired. The blast caught him in the side, burning through his uniform and scorching his flesh. The pain was incredible, but Daniel ignored it. He rolled over the princess, shielding her with his body, and drew his own weapon. His shot took the attacker in the chest. The man fell, dead before he hit the ground. The room erupted into chaos. People were screaming, running, trampling each other in their desperation to escape. The guards were pushing through the crowd, their weapons drawn, their faces masks of controlled fury. Daniel stayed where he was, lying on top of the princess, protecting her from any additional threats. The pain in his side was getting worse, and he could feel blood soaking through his uniform, but he refused to move. "Daniel," Ra whispered. "Daniel, are you hurt?" "I'm fine, Your Highness. Stay down until we know it's safe." "You're bleeding. You need medical attention. After you're secure, not before." The guards reached them and formed a protective circle. Only then did Daniel allow himself to relax. He rolled off the princess and sat up, wincing at the pain in his side. Ra was staring at him with an expression he could not read. "You saved my life," she said softly. "You put yourself between me and danger without hesitation." "It's my job, Your Highness." "No." She reached out and touched his face, her fingers cool against his skin. "It was more than that. I could see it in your eyes. You were willing to die for me." Daniel did not know what to say. The truth was, in that moment when he saw the weapon rising, he had not thought about duty or obligation. He had thought only of her. He had thought only of protecting her, no matter the cost. "We need to get you to the medical bay," Ra said, her voice firm. "Now." The wound was serious but not life-threatening. The medical team was able to repair the damage, though Daniel would carry a scar for the rest of his life. He spent 2 days in the medical bay, recovering from the treatment and the shock of the attack. Ra visited him every day. She sat beside his bed, talking to him about nothing and everything, making him laugh despite the pain. She brought him books from the ship's library, strange texts that she translated for him with patient care. She held his hand when the pain medication wore off and the agony returned. It was during one of these visits that Daniel finally asked the question that had been bothering him. "The attacker," he said, "who was he?" Ra's expression darkened. His name was Gregory Stone. He was a member of a human supremacist group called the Pure Earth Movement. They believed that humans should not ally with alien species, that we should stand alone against the galaxy. "I've heard of them, fringe extremists, mostly harmless." "Not anymore. The investigation revealed that the Pure Earth Movement has been growing in strength. They have cells on multiple colonies, and they have been recruiting scientists and engineers to their cause. Gregory Stone was one of their agents, placed on Frontier's edge specifically to assassinate me." Daniel felt a chill run through him. They wanted to destroy the Alliance. "Yes, by killing me, they hoped to spark a war between our peoples. They believed that humanity would be better off fighting alone than sharing the galaxy with what they call inferior species." "That's insane." "Yes, but insanity can be dangerous." Ra was silent for a moment, then continued. "The guards have been doubled. The remaining colonies on our tour have been warned. But I want you to know, Daniel, that none of this changes anything for me. I still intend to complete the tour. I will not let these extremists win." Daniel looked at her with new respect. "You're very brave, Your Highness." "No," she smiled sadly. "I am simply stubborn. It is a family trait." She paused, then added, "And please, Daniel, when we are alone, call me. We have been through too much together for formalities." "As you wish." Her smile brightened, and Daniel felt his heart skip a beat. He was falling for her. He knew it, and he knew it was dangerous, but he could not stop himself. She was like no one he had ever met, human or otherwise. And from the way she looked at him, he suspected she felt the same way. The tour continued. They visited 5 more colonies over the next 2 months, and each one brought new experiences and new challenges. There were more dangers, more close calls, more moments when Daniel had to put himself between the princess and those who wished her harm. But there were also moments of joy, of laughter, of a connection that grew deeper with each passing day. By the time they returned to the embassy on Earth, Daniel knew that his life would never be the same. He had started this assignment as a soldier doing his duty. He was ending it as a man in love. But he also knew that their love was impossible. She was a princess of the Empire, third in line for the throne of the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. He was a human soldier, a member of a species that they considered barely above primitive. The gap between them was wider than the space between stars. On the night before they were to part ways, Ra summoned him to the garden where they had first met. She was standing by the pond with the gold and silver fish, her expression unreadable in the soft glow of the bioluminescent flowers. "Daniel," she said as he approached, "there is something I must tell you." "Yes." She turned to face him, and he saw that her silver eyes were bright with unshed tears. "These past 3 months have been the happiest of my life. You have shown me what it means to be truly alive, to feel connected to another being in a way I never thought possible. I do not know what the future holds for either of us, but I want you to know that I will never forget you. No matter what happens, no matter where our paths may lead, you will always hold a special place in my heart." Daniel stepped closer to her, his own heart pounding in his chest. "I feel the same way. I know this is impossible, I know we can never be together, but I cannot deny what I feel. You have changed me in ways I cannot begin to describe." Ra reached out and took his hands in hers. "Perhaps it is not as impossible as you think, Daniel. I have spoken with my mother. I have asked her to allow you to remain at my side, not just for this tour, but permanently. I have asked her to make you my shield bearer, the highest position of honor that a non can hold." Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "Your mother would never agree to that." "She has not decided yet, but she is considering it." Ross smiled through her tears. "You see, Daniel, you are not the only one who is stubborn. I do not intend to let you go without a fight." Daniel did not know what to say. The possibility of staying with her, of building a life at her side, was more than he had ever dared to dream. But he also knew the challenges they would face, the opposition they would encounter, the countless obstacles that stood in their way. "Whatever happens," he said finally, "I want you to know that I love you. I have loved you since the moment I saw you in this garden, examining that flower with such wonder in your eyes. I will love you until my last breath, whether we are together or apart." Ra's tears finally fell, streaming down her violet cheeks like diamonds. "I love you too, Daniel, more than I ever thought possible." She kissed him then, a soft and gentle kiss that held the promise of everything they could be. Daniel held her in his arms, feeling her warmth against his body, and for a moment the impossibility of their situation faded away. For a moment, there was only the two of them, standing in a garden of bioluminescent flowers, their hearts beating as one. When they finally parted, Ra was smiling. "We will find a way, Daniel, I promise you, we will find a way." Daniel nodded, his own smile matching hers. "I believe you, I believe you." They stood together in the garden, watching the fish swim in lazy circles, listening to the distant sound of falling water. The future was uncertain, filled with dangers and challenges that neither of them could predict, but they would face it together. And that was enough.